To learn הבחירה every day in the Meben and Sorim. Today we have the honor to have the Menahel from Beis Rivke, a shliach from Rabbi Messini from the Alter Shluchim in Mונטריאול, הרב החסיד, הרב יוסף מינקאוויטש. הרב מינקאוויטש, בבקשה.
In a letter to Rabbi Greenglass in Elul Tafshin Gimel of 1943, 79 years ago, the Rebbe writes that we're preparing now, that the Rebbe is preparing a kavitz, a booklet about the Beis HaMikdash, which has the layout of the Beis HaMikdash, and many details about the Beis HaMikdash, and it's Sfas HaMedina will be coming out in English. So this was a letter that was printed, but people have never seen these things that the Rebbe wrote. Recently, it was discovered many pages that the Rebbe was preparing, and it seems that wasn't enough time to finish it, so it never came out. But there's many interesting things. So what I did, I cut out with the scissors a few of the things of the pages. I pasted it together. We'll try to go over a few items that have very interesting things that not known before. You have the page. On the front page, so the Rebbe actually worked with a copy. There were photocopy machines in those days. So someone wrote over in the Peres Yisrael, in Sechtas Midas, it shows a diagram of the Beis HaMikdash and explaining various things about the Beis HaMikdash from the diagram. And someone wrote over for the Rebbe, that the Rebbe should be able to work, so he wrote it over. So this is what it looks like, but it's not clear, so I just, so someone actually recently, the front page that you see by you now is a copy basically, but a printed copy with a diagram made on a computer. You should be able to see clearly what went into the Rebbe, basically, and many of the comments of the Rebbe. Not everything is there, just some of the arrows, etc. A lot of it was written on a separate page. So it's important to see the whole thing all together, but we'll just deal with a few items. Now, if you look on the bottom of this diagram, there's a 1, starting from the bottom, a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4. So we'll cover 4 items about the Beis HaMikdash, and then we'll have time, we'll do about the Harabayis. So starting with number 1. So number 1, you see the Ezras Noshim, that's the big box, that has a 4, 5, 6, and 7. And there was 4 different lishkas that were inside Ezras Noshim. We'll get to that in a minute. But outside of that, there's other things also. So if you see between the 4 and the 7, there's a number 3, and the Rebbe crossed it out. That's written over from what the Rebbe crossed out. That number 3 is the Sanhedrin Tana. The Mishnah says Sanhedrin that there were 3 Sanhedrin that were in the Beis HaMikdash. There was one that was by the Pesach Harabayis, one was the Pesach Hazorah, and then was in the another one which had the Sanhedrin Gdela. So by saying Pesach Harabayis, so the Peres Yisrael, when he made the diagram, he put one. The Harabayis you don't see on this diagram. The Harabayis is much further away from here. He put one of the Sanhedrin Tana, he put by the Harabayis, as soon as you walk into the Harabayis, and then he put one as soon as you walk in to the Ezras Noshim. But the fact is, Rashi, in Sanhedrin, Rashi says differently. Rashi says, Shara Mizrachi, Shalifnim and Achel, Lifnim, Lifnei Ezras Noshim. That one has to be right outside, right as close as possible to the Azorah of the Beis HaMikdash, not by the Har HaBayis, by the opening of the beginning of the Har HaBayis. A very long stretch from the beginning of the Har HaBayis, so you actually get to the Ezra Snoshim. So it's right outside the door is one, and there's one right outside the door of going into the Ezra Yisrael, which means that the Ezra Snoshim right outside the door. So if you can see what the Rebbe did, try to copy it. So he put a number 3, which meant the Sanhedrin Tano. So the Rebbe said it should be put below number 3, right by the door, Shara Mizrachi going in, and another one next to the box of number 5. That's right. That's the end of the Ezra Snoshim. That it should go over there. So we'll go on the second page. We can do the actual Lashon of the Rebbe. So you can see if the Rebbe writes. And by the way, what's printed here in Hebrew, the lighter font, looks maybe like a little chopped font. That's not from the Rebbe. That's from Bel Levin, who transcribed a lot of this. So that is the explaining it. But everything else is the Rebbe's Lashon, and you have on the side, you have the Ksaviyat Kodesh also, what the Rebbe wrote. So we'll just do a part inside, with the one that's number 1 on page 2. It says, Lishkas and Hedek Tana Tsuyura Be'ezus Noshin B'fnim Limin Aknisa. It was shown, like I said before. So the Rebbe was ma'ated that the place belongs, according to Rashi, the Bartanura, to Yisrus Yontif, it has to be right by the Chayil. Chayil means right out, there was 10 amas away, around the Beis HaMikdash itself. There was a small fence, a small fence, and then there was 10 amas. So in that area it belongs. And that's what Rashi says, but Tanura they all say. And so he said, of course, to make in the diagram to add a number 3, it looks like a battery, but the number 3, because that's what he used, that's what he made for the Sanhedrin Tana. And also next to the steps, to the round steps that we'll see in a moment, which goes from the Ezra Snoshim to Ezra Yisrael, it belongs there also. So again, you'll see on the diagram, that's what the Rebbe said to put it. The number 3 was next to the box, which is number 5, that's right next to the steps, and also before you walk into the Ezra Snoshim. Okay, now we'll go to number 2. Number 2, if you look, the way in the Tiferes Yisrael, you can see it now printed in Mishnayos like that also. The steps were round steps. That's as in the Mishnah. There were agulas going up from Ezra Snoshim to Ezra Yisrael. So those steps were rounded. He added on the side something also on the side. Okay, so that we'll do in a moment. Before that, the lishkes, there was 4 4 boxes there, 4, 5, 6, and 7. The Mishnah says there was Arboim Amma. Arboim Amma going from Mizrach to Ma'ariv, going from the front to the back, was 40 Ammas. It doesn't say, the Mishnah doesn't say the width. So the Tiferes Yisrael and others make it into a square, 40 by 40. But the Rebbe says, if you look in Yecheskel, there it says clearly that's 40 by 30. 40 the depth, 1 Mizrach L'Ma'ariv, but in the width it was only 30. And the Rebbe said that that's how it should be, because things that are not clear, we have to learn it out from there. So we'll do number 2, just to do inside a little bit. So the Rebbe said, it's not clear. Beis HaMikdash doesn't say how it was. And number 4 is Ben Yecheskel. And then he explains, because over there it says clearly, it says that was Abbas, Machseis, Chachotza, Chatzeres, Keturis. Keturis over here means that was open to the sky, it wasn't covered. Other places, a lot of bias were covered, this wasn't covered. And it says clearly, Aboyim Eidach were Shleishim Reichav. So it says clearly it was 40 by 30, and that's what the Radak says like that also, etc., etc. And the Mishnah itself brings a proof about these 4 chambers. It brings a proof from the ways by Yecheskel, but the proof that he's using over there is for the Keturis. Keturis means that it was open. So from that Mishnah itself, where it speaks about the size of these 4 chambers, it says clearly that we're using the binyan of Yecheskel to teach us about how the way it should be. So the Rebbe said that to make it clearly, that last 2 lines over there, by number 2, 40 Mimizrach Lamayriv, but only 30 Mitzvah Ladar. So if you look at the other places, it's 40 by 40. The Rebbe says no, it should be 40 by 30. Now we'll get to the next thing. So again on the diagram, it's number 3. So if you see, there's a semicircle above the big box of 5 and 6, a semicircle, and on both sides of the semicircle is protruding also some more steps. That's how the Pharisee Israel made it. He made first a semicircle, like it says in the Mishnah Kulish, but then it continued on straight against the wall, not in the circle. And the Rebbe said that that's not proper. And the Rebbe even made a diagram. You can see the Rebbe's Ksav on the first line, the Ksav Yad, in box number 3 on the second page. Sorech liyas yechotze eagle, the lay, not a chotze eagle and 2 things coming out from the side. That's no good. It has to be a chotze eagle all the way through, all around. And the Rebbe said that instead of those 2 places where he extended the eagle and he made it going straight, those 2 places have to be open, and that's an opening for, there were 2 chambers right under the Eretz Yisrael. The Eretz Yisrael was higher, 7.5 amas higher. You have to walk up, so automatically it made a space. So under the Eretz Yisrael, when you're standing there, the Eretz Yisrael was completely flat. There was no gradations going higher. It only went higher at the end of the Eretz Yisrael. The Eretz Yisrael was flat. So from both sides, the Levim, the musicians, they were the musicians that allowed to play all different instruments, and that's where they kept their instruments on both sides of these steps. How many steps? So there are 15 steps, and it has to do with this 15 Shir Amalas that we have in Tilim. And by Simcha Beis HaSha'eva, when they had the dancing and the playing and everything else, the Levim stood on those steps, on the 15 steps, one higher than the other, and they're able to play and make Simcha. So again, the Rebbe said that the eagle is wrong, that it's made the way he made it, but it has to be made an eagle completely without going off on the sides. Then we'll go a little higher. Okay, let's look back on the diagram. Number 4. Number 4, you see there's a number 30 on top and a number 29 on the side. Okay, so there was the 29. It says there was 24 Mishmeiros that worked in the Beis HaMikdash, and each one had a place where to shech the korban. So there was a special tabas to put the head of the animal into that tabas to hold it straight, and be able to shech it properly. And right next to it, there were 8 tables that we be able to take off the skin and the hide and to wash the hide out and the meat. Everything has to be done. So there it shows, you can see it, under the 30 it shows 2, 2, 2, 2. Going from Yisuk to Ma'ariv, it's going 2. And but the Shulchan Aruch, that's a tabois. That's the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch, there's 2, 2, 2, 2. The tabois also goes 4, 4, 4, 4, 6, all the way down. But on the top is 4. And the Rebbe says that it has to be differently. It has to be the 8, have to be 4 across, from Tzafim to Dorim, 4 across, and under it another 4. And the same thing when we deal with the tabois, also has to be 6 across, going down 6, 6, 6, 6. 4 times 6 this way. The total stays the same. And actually in the Mishnah, in Midas it brings down B'yeshem and it brings down both ways. And the Rebbe, because there's a big Rashi in Yuma, after Zayin, Rashi over there, it comes out that's the Seder. And you see on the Rebbe writes on the side, it should be 6 Midorim L'Tzofen and 4 Mimizrach L'Mayri V'Leila Heipach, and not the other way around. So that's the way the Rebbe put it in the diagram that the Rebbe made. That's how it should be. So that's the Kitzur understanding. Now we'll go, the next page is on the left side. You see the diagram that the Rebbe himself actually made. It's of the tzir of the Harabayis. The Harabayis. And then the Rebbe explained exactly where everything belongs. And on the right side is just basically a print of what the Rebbe wrote. It should be printed to be clear. So if you look on the little box on the left side, the small box, that's also the Rebbe's handwriting, and the Rebbe writes exactly where everything is. So he starts off with Shar Chulda. Chulda is on the left side, and there were two. Shar Chulda is, as a matter of fact, today you can see it. You're standing by the case of Maravi, it's to your right and around the corner, and it's still there. There's two Shorim there, they're completely closed up. This Chulda Nevi'ah used to sit there. It says in Tanakh, it's brought down, Melachim, that she said Yerushalayim Mishnah. So Yosef Yontif said that Mishnah means like a Mishnah, but there was two gates next to each other. She used to sit over there. That's called Shar Chulda. And the Mizrach, the one in the front, but it says east, that's for east, is Shar Shushan. The Shar Shushan, that gate was in the Mizrach. It had on top of the gate there was a diagram of what Shushan looked, because the multi-purpose asked him to put it in. On the right side, the Shar Tadi, that was a quiet one. It says people that had to leave the Beis Hamikdash for whatever reason. We went from there, and then the Shar Kopinis, that this was behind the on the case of Maravi, in that wall, and it says it's called Kopinis because they planted a rose garden there, whatever it is. So this is basically the seal of the Harabayis itself. Now, if you look underneath, on the next page we'll have it printed, but it's interesting to see that Rebbe writes in the first Ksav Yad, the Rebbe writes Hamidas 250. 250, if you look in the Harabayis, look in the print, it'll be easier to see. It says 115, but really 115 and 135. Ezra's notion was 135 by 135. So when they counted the numbers, they counted really as 150 to 135. So it means on the Mizrach side it was 250. So the Rebbe says you have to keep in mind, and chutz me'evechem is harabayis. We're not taking into account the thickness of the walls around the harabayis. All these numbers and the measurements start from inside, which is interesting. In the Geil Halacha, the question, many people have a shayla, if you're allowed to put something, your finger into the walls of the harabayis. But a case of Maravi, for example, according to this, it comes out that you're counting, everything is being counted from the other side. Otherwise, you don't have 500 amas by 500 amas. The Nichel was the Eivich Hemiris HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash walls are also included. Ki Kuf Peizayin al Kuf Lamed Hei. If you see the Azorah is 187 by 135. So the Rebbe says that's Hein Bifnim Milvad Hanal. That's inside. That's an inside measurement. But there was walls. So those walls are counted when you say, let's say, 265 on the Durham side. That does not include the walls of the Harabayis around, but it does include the walls of the Azorah itself. Or else you won't have the Azorah, you won't have Kuf Lamed Hey, you won't have the right measurements. Okay, the next Ksav will do it on the next page. Just print it up, it'll be easier to read. Easier to read it. A lot of Ksav here, but it's easier to read. So I'll just go through. Harabayis, the Rebbe says, is 500 amas, 500 amas. And the space, that says in the Mishnah, it doesn't give, it just says that in the Dorim was more than the Mizrach, and Mizrach was more than in Sofan, and Sofan was more. Each one was more than the other, and the least was the Ma'id. But it doesn't say. So he brings, the Rebbe says, the Shilta Gevedim, which is brought down to Eretz Yisrael, says that these are the measurements. That 265 again with the thickness of the walls of the Azorah, and the Tzofim on the north side was 100, on the east side was 250, which includes Desert Noshim, and on the Ma'id, on the back of the Beis HaMikdash, was 63 amas. Now the Rebbe continues, I'll just, you can follow, I'll read it in English so you can follow the Hebrew. The place, the exact location of the gates of the Harabayis, which is not known exactly. We just know which side it's on, but we don't know exactly. And the height of the Shorim was 20 amas, that's about 30 feet, and the width was 10 amas. And again, the Rebbe was taking a different setlach. So again, the Rebbe mentioned again that the 250s accept besides the thickness of the walls, and it includes the walls of the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, and the Rebbe says again, and we said that before, we went through that before. Now it says that all the Shorim, all the gates, is just the space of the gate itself, without taking into account the mashkif that's above it, that goes above the lintel, everything else. And it was 20 amas high, and the width was 10 amas. And it says that they all had doors, and when they got richer, they made them out of gold, except the Shad Nikonet. Shad Nikonet is the famous story. There was a person called Nikon, he went special to Mitzrayim to order 2 beautiful doors made out of copper to Beis HaMikdash, and when he came back, there was a big storm, and he threw one door over to lighten the load, and they were about to throw the next door over, so he said, I'm going with it. He went around it, and just when he did that, the storm stopped. When they arrived in Akko, Yafo, wherever they arrived at the port, all of a sudden, the other door was hanging around back of the boat. So because of that, the nest happened, and also it said that it shone just like gold by itself. So therefore, all the things that's the only one that they didn't make gold. They left it the way it is. And the Rebbe says that the Rambam writes, this is not the Rebbe's lotion. It says that even the gates of the Azorah, if they have enough money, so then they make it zov. So the Rebbe says that comes out that only the Azorah you make it in gold if they have money, but not the Harabayis. There's gates all around. There's entrances on the Harabayis. So since he brings the proof from Shari Azorah, so it comes out that the other gates around Harabayis, it wasn't that way. And the Rebbe said that Tzorich Iyun, the Limashma came to Mishnah. The Mishnah comes out that all the gates were made gold. And the Rebbe said also to make sure that the Shara Mizrachi, the eastern gate of going into Harabayis, they're all facing each other, of Ezras Noshim and Ezras Yisrael. Okay, and the Rebbe said to check up some things. But then the Rebbe has a question over here that the Chemes Harabayis and Mizrach on the east side had to be less than 26 amas, because the height of the shad, all the shorim are the same, was 6 amas, and the mashkif on top of it can be more than 6 amas. And the reason being, because when the Kayan shechted the korban on the Harazeisim, has to be able to see straight into the door of the Kiddush HaKadoshim. If you would make it higher, the mantle's going up. So if you would make it higher on the eastern wall, the first wall, you wouldn't be able to see. And the Rebbe says also that the height and the thickness of the walls, any yadua, it's not known. And he brings an interesting thing that in the diagram of the Faris Yisrael, he brings down in the name of somebody called. It's also known in English, letters of Aristia. It's not Aristotle. He lived in the times of the second Beis HaMikdash. Over there it says that they were higher than the Mizrach, and they were more than 70 amas. And look in the footnote Gimel, the Rebbe writes that the Sharachem is besides the eastern wall. And the Rebbe writes, you have the Xavier on the side also, the whole controversial, they just publicized it about 600 years ago, and they say it was written the times of the second Beis HaMikdash. Okay, and now there's the last thing we'll finish off, that it says that Tzuras Habayis, the Faris Yisrael, he writes that the eastern wall was only 20 amas. That's it. The height was 20 amas. So with Tzorich Iyun Godel, the Rebbe writes, if the whole gate opening had to be 20, and if the whole wall was 20, there was nothing on top of that opening. It says everything had to have at least 20 and had to have a mashkif. So it's hate what the Mishnah writes that it had a mashkif. According to our claim, but he wasn't so exact. The Faris Yisrael and it has to be a little bit more than Chofamis. Okay, so most of what you see here, you can also find, and also the Rebbe writes Midas Hatoyim Ein Yedim, the size of all the lockers that have many lockers all around the Beis HaMikdash. It's not known exactly the actual size. And so hopefully, if you all see it, the Korid Mamish, see all these things that the Rebbe made it, we see it, the real Mamish.
Amen. Shkoyach. To remind everybody, right after Ma'ariv, there will be a Siyum Meseches. Everybody has to say. Shkoyach, Mינקאוויטש. Don't forget to give